I welcome you, my dear brothers and sisters who are listening to me out there. As I share with you a brief life history of St. Francis of Assisi, a well-known man who lived his life to the fullest, who gave himself totally and completely for God. Francis is known to have lived his life as a saint. He lived a saintly life. He is a Christ-like saint. Francis has so much to be talked about, for he did so much. He did a lot. He left us a task on which all of us ought to strive and fulfill. Francis was born in Italy, in Assisi, in the year 1182. His father was Peter Bernardone, and his mother was Lady Pica. He was originally named John, but later his father changed his name to Francesco. Francis grew up leading a very privileged life as a son of a wealthy cloth merchant. Francis was a very popular man in Assisi, for he loved to learn and to sing. Francis loved sports, and he loved merrymaking with his fellow youths. And so many around him loved his way of life, for he lived it perfectly well, and he lived his life joyfully. Francis sought the glory and honor of battle at the year 1201 at the age of 19 years. Such a very young man. He outfitted himself as a knight to join the war with Assisi rival in Perugia. This war, and due to his commitment and determination, he opted to try for the second time to join the war. But as they say, God's way is different from human way. As he was on his journey to Perugia, Francis had a vision. Francis had a voice speaking to him, but he really didn't understand who was speaking to him, or rather, who was talking to him, and he was disturbed. This vision marked the beginning of his conversion, and he didn't continue with the war, but rather changed back his way to a life which God wanted him to live. His abrupt change of life frustrated his father so much, for Francis decided to leave the wealth of his parents and embrace a life of poverty, a life of nothingness. He loved to share with the poor, and he could pick most of the items from his father's shop and share them to the poor. This shows us how Francis had such a sharing heart, a giving heart. He had love for everyone. Francis did not despise anybody in his entire life. He even welcomed those who were completely abandoned by the society in his life. A great example is where Francis embraced the leper and kissed him and kissed him. He saw God in everybody and in every creature. Francis was such a prayerful man. And as he was praying in the small church of San Damiano, God spoke to him through the crucifix, telling him to go and rebuild the church which was falling into ruin. Francis did not despise anybody in his entire life. He even welcomed those who were completely abandoned by the society in his life. A great example is where Francis embraced the leper and kissed him. He saw God in everybody and in every creature. Francis was such a prayerful man. And as he was praying in the small church of San Damiano, God spoke to him through the crucifix, telling him to go and rebuild the church which was falling into ruin. This disturbed him a lot. Francis was in confusion. Francis was disturbed. He worked tirelessly. He worked day and night. And many people around called him a madman. Francis worked to please God, and he always wished to do the will of the Father. Francis had the passion to serve God in all his creatures. He was such a peacemaker. Francis loved peace, and he ensured everybody around him was at peace. He even went ahead to bring peace between the wolf and the community in Gubbio, a wolf which was a threat to the entire community. He always prayed to God to grant him the grace to be a peacemaker. Let us try to imitate Saint Francis. He did so much that we have to learn from him. Let us now listen to the short prayer which he always offered to God, asking God to make him a peacemaker.
Father, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me show love. Where there is injury, let me give pardon. Where there is doubt, let me have faith. Where there is darkness, let me spread light. Where there is sadness, help me find joy.
That was the short prayer of St. Francis. He started to understand, not to be understood. He always loved everybody, and he consoled everybody. Francis is a man who lived the gospel life. He lived the gospel to the fullest and encouraged his brothers to preach the gospel to everyone and to live it by themselves. For he always said that our walking is our preaching. Francis loved the gospel and lived by the gospel. He was such a man of prayerful, as I've told you there before, and he had the passion for the Eucharist the Blessed Sacrament, where he spent most of his time, praying to God to guide him, praying to God to journey with him, pouring out himself to God, giving up himself to God. He loved the Blessed Sacrament. Francis is known for his love of nature. Wow! As Franciscans, we are called to follow closely on the footsteps of Saint Francis, who loved nature. He saw God's beautiful creation in nature. He praised God in nature. He thanked him in nature. Francis loved nature. Francis is known to have founded the Franciscan order. Is known to have founded the Franciscan order of friars and the order of the poor clerks. Francis liked to live as Christ lived. To be brief enough, how he received his stigmata while he was at Mount Lavena praying with the brother whom he loved most, Brother Leo. He was in a deep prayer. Francis received the stigmata on his hands, his feet, and on his side, the wounds which represented exactly those of Christ on the cross. Francis endured this great pain for 2 years before his death. And he died while singing Psalm 114 in the year 1226. And he was declared a saint just 2 years after his death. Francis is known for his love for God, for he did so much. He did a lot. His poor life was even embraced in his passing away from this world. He died a poor death. Francis' passing from this world is celebrated by the Franciscans in the entire world on the eve before his feast day. Francis, the little man of Assisi, helped to shape the spirituality of early 13th century in Europe. He gathered out the community of people to live out a radical commitment to the gospel message of humility, love, poverty, and respect for all people and for all creation. He set the world on fire, and respect for all people and for all creation. He set the world on fire with the love of God, and has left a legacy that has captured the imagination of both the believers and non-believers. We admire the life of Saint Francis, and we admire how he lived. We admire his humility, simplicity, his love for all, his obedience to God, his meekness, and above all, his way of prayer. He saw God in everything. I pray for you today who are listening to me, that you may always yearn to imitate St. Francis in your entire life. Learn to walk as he did. Learn to imitate him in every bit of your life. Learn to be peacemakers. Live a life perfectly and fully for God. Make your life happy and live it happily. I pray for you that you may always try to do your very best to imitate him. Try to do your very best, to be your very best in everything that you ought to do. Try to love God above everything. Empty yourself for the sake of Christ, as the saint did. I pray for you that Francis may always guide you in everything that you do. And I pray that his blessings may always be upon you, all you who are listening to me. May you love the best part, that is God, that is Christ himself. That is Christ himself. Love to embrace him in every difficulty, in every way of life that you go through. Accept the little pain that he gives you and carry it without complaint, as our Seraphic Father Saint Francis did. With all his heart, he gave himself to God, and therefore received the blessings from Saint Francis.
His face to shine upon you. The Lord will bless you. The Lord will keep you and be gracious unto you.
I wish you all God's blessing in all that you ought to do, in your plans and endeavors. And may Saint Francis pray for us all. My God and my all. Saint Francis, pray for us. Thank you.